Howdy, everyone, and welcome to Two-Headed Wizard, a Once Upon a Galaxy podcast. I'm your host, Jampot, and my guest this episode is YouTuber NoLucksGiven. Let's jump right into the episode and allow him to introduce himself. All right, so yeah, hi there, NoLucksGiven. Yeah, do you wanna introduce yourself real quick? Just give us a little sense of what you're about, both in general and for Galaxy specifically.
Sure. What's up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven. I am a YouTuber primarily in terms of content creation. Don't really do the streaming stuff as much, but I post daily videos on YouTube for Once Upon a Galaxy and whatever other games I'm enjoying. Right now, there's a few games that I'm enjoying. Demon Bluff, Marvel Snap, Once Upon a Galaxy. I'm also playing Slay the Spire for the first time, completely unspoiled somehow, and just checking that out. And also just really enjoying my time playing Once Upon a Galaxy as well.
Oh, I'm so jealous of you getting to play Slay the Spire for the first time. I love that game so much. And yeah, like my background's definitely like in a lot of roguelikes, which I think
Cool.
Galaxy lends itself well to people who like that kind of
Mm.
thing. So, but yeah, what a game. But yeah, so what do you like about Galaxy? What drew you to it, and what kept you there?
So, what drew me to it? I mean, I think that auto battlers are my favorite genre of games for the limited time that they've been around. I vastly prefer multiplayer games because, especially as opposed to like just roguelikes, even though we just brought up Slay the Spire, um, I would much rather play against other people because then, well, in theory, it can always be balanced because you don't have to worry about the devs necessarily balancing. And there can still be broken things in auto battlers for sure, but you can find those broken things just as easily as your opponents can. And so it kind of gives the um, exploration of a limited type game mode to for people that are familiar with like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone's Arena, while just allowing everyone to come in and be on the same page. So I was really into the game Storybook Brawl, and sad to see that go for sure. And Once Upon a Galaxy is not everything that Storybook Brawl was for me, but it's still pretty cool and yeah, a satisfying play experience, I think.
Yeah, I totally, yeah, I mean, I loved Brawl. I like Galaxy a lot more. I think for whatever reason, Galaxy seems to have clicked, but it might just be like that I have time in my life to like get involved in the community, and that of course makes such a huge difference. Um, I think for me, like even as someone who does really love single player roguelikes, I think one thing that's really fun about Galaxy is that you can kind of, in a lot of ways, approach it like a single player roguelike, but you don't know what your bosses are going to be. That's part of the fun of those games is understanding what exactly you need to beat. And in Galaxy, you have a sense of what things are can be strong in the meta, but every game is often quite different. You can't just be like, oh, I know I need exactly these things to beat the heart or whatever. You have to improvise a lot more, and I find that to be such a fun challenge. Um,
For sure. Yeah. I think that, yeah, just when you're playing up against another human and galaxy, I think the biggest thing is just I don't know how much you've played around with live lobbies as opposed to the async lobbies that we have, but you don't get as much of like the interactive part of the game with the asynchronous lobbies. But I think that that definitely is like a fun angle to it for sure. Is like, yeah, trying to play around exactly what you're up against,
yeah,
and yeah,
I've been playing a little bit more live lobbies, and they're so much fun, and they definitely like the multiplayer sensation is completely different in them. I like the async like kind of puzzle dimension to it because of course your opponents can't react to you, and that means that you get to play very differently in ways that I think can be fun and interesting, but I think it's
Oh, for
definitely
sure.
less strategic and competitive in its own way. Although I think it has really interesting, like a puzzle. I think it's a puzzle, a little
Yeah,
bit more than
yeah.
a back and forth interactive thing. Do you play a lot of
Yeah, I
live
don't think it's
lobbies?
crazy to look at the uh, asynchronous lobbies as like a puzzle game sort of thing. I have not played many live lobbies. I think I've played 2, maybe 3. I made a video about my first live lobby, which, Matt Place was in the lobby with me, and, we wound up being the final 2 players in that. So that was really fun, but just haven't really prioritized it too much. Once it is like a queue in the game and it's just a button I can press, I'll press that button a lot though, for sure.
Yeah, I think once that is the case, I think that will probably be my like if I'm gonna sit down and play the game, I'm gonna do that, especially if I'm recording or whatever. But if
Right.
I often do just like open it up when I'm standing in line somewhere, and then
Yeah, yeah. I
that's when
mean,
I'll play async.
I'm currently watching, so this was sort of like a joke for myself and my partner, is that I saw that the Stranger Things final episodes were being posted on, like, I think it was Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Eve, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with Stranger Things, but they put out the final 3 episodes on those big holidays, and I hadn't watched any of the show. So I was joking with my partner and I was like, "Oh, we still have plenty of time to catch up." And so yeah, I've been, playing some Once Upon a Galaxy while watching Stranger Things, and just whatever when you're watching TV or something, it's a totally fine game to play.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, I think it works so well on both those dimensions of like you can just pick it up and mash the things together and have some fun.
Mhm.
But I don't feel like when I do sit down and like go in the tank and sometimes um, take a little bit more time with my decisions, that time is wasted, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think that you can definitely like min max and really care about what you're doing, and then you can also just kind of play it casually, unlock some cards, and power up your collection. So that way, like when you start to care about the games, that's kind of how I look at it. Is like, yeah, I'm unlocking more cards, so that way when I'm making videos about the game, then I've got more choices to make. And there's another like very specific thing that probably won't concern most people, but like when you load up the game on your app, you can get to the captain selection screen, and then if there's really cool captains, then I leave it there and I load up the game on the computer and then I play and I record with commentary. So you have like a little bit of scouting that I'll do while I'm on the app. If I like don't like any of the captains, then I just play the game real quick on my phone to get through it.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've done where like if people are talking about something on Discord and then I just happen to like open up the app and see something like a captain that I'm talking about, like I'll just pop on over to the computer and record in that case. And I like, I love being able to do that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so what have you been playing in Galaxy recently? Like what kind of things have you been liking? Because I think the meta has stabilized a lot since the mid-month patch. Um, but yeah, do you have any particular thoughts or opinions about that?
So I guess as far as like the metagame and that kind of stuff, I'm maybe not the most well equipped, because I feel like I just kind of play, whatever galaxy happens to be, that's just what I'll play. So yeah, I'm not totally sure on those types of questions in terms of like, um
I guess what I'm asking then is like, what have you been playing? Because because that to me then says what you think Galaxy is right now. Um,
yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really know. I basically like, I mean, I'll I'm doing the same worm scale tinker stuff that
Sure.
everybody else does, if that's like part of the idea of the question.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of
But
what I'm asking. Like, what kind of
yeah,
strategies do you end up kind of keeping in mind as like, maybe you don't quite hit on some turns. You're like, okay, well, what am I trying hoping to hit in the future? Um, and like, what are you
yeah,
excited when you see?
I don't really even like think of the game that same way, I guess, is
Okay.
partially what I'm getting at. Because, like, you say, "What do you play?" And I think about, like, "Oh, what captains am I, like, excited to be playing with right now?" And mostly the things that are top of mind for me are the newest free captains for the month of January, because, for the past few months, I've been trying to record a video specifically on all of the captains as they become free. So I've been had a lot of fun playing Romeo this month, and not as much fun playing the other ones, but definitely have been excited to play with Romeo every time I see him. And that's like the first place that my brain goes, but I don't necessarily have like something that I'm trying to force on any specific captain,
Hmm.
like, just generally, but on specific captains, there are, like, specific things that I'm trying to do then, obviously. I guess part of it comes from the fact that, like, I don't know if I necessarily have Worm Scale Tinker unlocked on every captain, my collection isn't at that level necessarily.
Yeah, I think that I'm really excited to talk about Romeo a little bit more because I think that captain is like really, really fun and in a really sweet
Yeah.
spot design-wise. But I think one thing that you kind of touched on earlier was that collection feeling. And I know that I think the consensus is that the collection system is imperfect right now, but I do like the fact that there is a collection system. It seems like for a lot of players that's kind of a fun thing to be doing, that kind of tension between um, making things work when you don't have it all.
Mhm.
And then also like collecting things is fun on its own, and it kind of has that like schoolyard feel in some ways where you have to make do, and sometimes you come across something really cool because you don't have access to the obvious choice. Um, but yeah, so Romeo, I love playing Romeo. Every game, like it's very rare that I have a Romeo game where I'm like, this just feels like unsatisfying or a miss, like
Mhm.
and
Yeah, it's cool. He's asking you to do cool things, and, I mean, so I don't you did play a little bit of, Storybook Brawl, right? And, True Love's Kiss is a rip right from that game, and it probably was always my favorite thing to be doing in that game.
mhm.
A captain that is like centered around that is just a lot of fun, and questing is fun too. So yeah, it's just cool stuff, and then you get to find like secret rares, and that also feels just very unique.
Yeah, I think one big thing with Romeo is that like it kind of when you miss on your True Love's Kiss, you know you've got another one coming. So it doesn't kind of like with Dragon Mother, sometimes you put yourself a little bit behind because you have to have this
Mm.
egg sitting around for a couple turns, right? Like it's fine on turn two, but on turns three and four, it is taking up a meaningful slot that you could have some
Hmm.
stats on. So you really do want it to like get you somewhere on turn five when it transforms. Um, and then with Romeo, like if you miss, you're like, all right, got to do another quest, keep going up the ladder, right? Or you're butchering, which is often a more competitive decision, and you're like, okay, whatever, I have a rare, I'll just that serves a purpose as well. Um,
Yeah, so like I think I'd love to, talk more about Romeo, but you just brought up butchering, and I guess it's really just, and maybe this is an interesting perspective to talk about. Maybe it's not an interesting perspective to talk about at the same time. I have no clue how many captains I have. Uh, it was called the Butcher. I have no
mhm,
clue how many captains I have the Butcher unlocked on. Um, it might be like two. I don't know that I've actually never played with Butcher. That is the game that I am about to record, because it's not a card that comes in any captain's starter decks. So it's not a card that I just have. I unlocked it on a few candy captains where I've unlocked all of the cards. But it's also because it's not a card that people keep like on their ending boards. It's not a card that you unlock super early on any captain. So it's like I'm not, I don't chase the meta in terms of that just because of like where my collection is at sort of thing, you know, but definitely something I'd be interested in. And actually, yeah, I'm about to look into. I've got a, like I said, when I got the captains ready, I have Double Dealer ready to play and record with that next. And
Oh,
that's
are you
one of
gonna
the
do
few
a
captains
double
that I
dealer
have.
butcher?
Yeah, that's one of the few
Sweet.
captains that I have the butcher unlocked for. So that's, yeah, one of my next recordings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of captains that have like a pretty high power level are actually very flexible, and I think
Hmm.
that's right now, I don't want to just talk about what I think about the meta. It sounds like that's something that like doesn't interest you. It's not how you approach the game. So, but some of it's going to sneak into my my kind of
Yeah, yeah,
framework
for
for
sure.
things. Um, but
It's
yeah,
not that I don't find it interesting. Like, I I would have never really no Butcher's kind of a trickier card to evaluate, and I only know through like a few posts that I've seen on the Discord and stuff that it's a card worth looking at. Because like I said, it's not a card that is on end game boards, and with the asynchronous nature of the game, it's not it's not something that I'm like necessarily seeing a lot of people use or anything because, maybe there's like one in every 5, 10 lobbies, maybe I'll see a random butcher, but then it's gone, and it's not even something that I think I'm really encountering in my lobbies either. But that could be that could be like a rating thing. I don't know. Maybe do you see a lot of your asynchronous opponents playing the butcher against you?
it is very rare that I don't have a game with multiple opponents trying to butcher, I would say.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting. Okay.
I maybe not multiple. That's probably a little bit of hyperbole. I think I definitely think it's extremely rare that I see zero people trying to butcher, and it's very often that there are multiple people trying to butcher because I'm often one of those people.
Wow.
Right
Wow.
now, it's I think really well positioned. And I've been trying to when Peachy Queen like was kind of wreaking havoc. Um, I was tanking, like intentionally tanking my MMR, but just not caring about it. And I think I was just trying to like try the wackiest thing that I could and see like stress test it a little bit. And now that I think
Mhm.
the meta's in a little bit of a healthier place, I've been trying to like make sure that the things that I've like taken away from that actually mean things at a higher level. So I've been trying to like play to win basically a lot more and caring about my rank a little bit more. Partially for aura or whatever, but also um, just to I
Sure.
think it's also the most interesting thing to me is to like try and see like what the breadth of this game is. I think it has a
Mhm.
lot of it just has a lot of dimensions that I think are unexplored right now or underexplored perhaps. Um, and but I think conversely, Butcher is like a thing that almost every captain can make use of and can find something powerful to do with. And it's something incredibly
Right.
powerful and incredibly stable and pretty open. So I end up playing it a lot.
I saw it discussed as like one of the potential like universal decks in one of the deck list threads. Like somebody brought it up as just, yeah.
Yeah, if I don't know what I'm doing these days and I like don't find anything that I think is like particularly like exciting and competitive, I often just am running Butcher. Even on like CEO, for example, I actually have like a pretty solid win rate even though I was looking at a recent tier list where it was like slammed down an F. And I just think that like when you having access to a card like that is
Is the butcher a
the
villain?
Butcher is a villain, but I don't care about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
I think
It's
one
just,
thing,
yeah, gets you
yeah,
to turn 5 or whatever.
exactly. So and I don't know. Tier lists are something that are extremely fun to like make, I think, because it's fun to like rank these things, but I don't think it's particularly useful or healthy to um obsess over like whether or not they're accurate or stuff like that. But I think that
Yeah.
captains like CEO are fine, like 'cause just they kind of give you somewhere between an extra half heart and a heart if you play them with only that in
I
mind.
think that the like a tier list is going to um probably be more useful for newer players too, and not necessarily considering the butcher.
Yes.
Like you're for a new player that wants to know how good CEO is, the butcher is not a factor in that equation, right? Because they want to know how good it is with like basically the starter deck and probably no other unlocks because nobody really plays
That's a
CEO,
really good
right?
point. Yeah.
Uh,
And I think also
yeah.
it's a useful, yeah, I think once you have enough experience, you don't really need the tier list. It's just like a fun exercise. But early
Hmm.
on, I think it's like,
But it is good to know, yeah, what other people think is
yeah,
good.
but sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I think you get a sense of that too, based off like that is something that is much easier to see in the makeup of the lobby. Like if you're playing against a bunch of candy pandies, it's probably a good
Hmm.
captain. Whereas, Artemis is something that you don't typically see super
Yeah,
often.
there are a lot of Artemis enjoyers, I think, because that one's like such a unique sort of
Yeah,
challenge
yeah,
mode.
that's
But
fair.
I think
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of truth to that, and I think that's part of why like Goatee, for example, is quite powerful, even though like more than just the fact that it's like faster than some of the other like Jason of the Argonauts and stuff like that. It's the fact that like you are stealing
Hmm.
captains that other players have clearly valued.
Very good
It
point.
makes
Yeah,
it makes a
yeah.
really big difference. I had a recent game where I stole um, Gloria like or Piggy turn one, Gloria turn two, and then something like else absurd turn three, and then just like
What was the first thing that you
Visceral
said?
Piggy. So I still yeah, so I managed to
Oh,
get
oh,
like
yeah, sure.
three bonus shots on turn three, and then like it was I don't know some ridiculous cascade like that, and then like I hit like timeline duplicator as well. So
Mm,
I think it mattered so much that I was hitting those specific captains because those were strong captains and I
right,
needed a comparable
right.
amount of power in order to keep up. Um,
I think similarly, like on the topic of unlocks and meta and that sort of stuff, I feel like I see a worm scale tinker in most of my lobbies. Maybe that's because of where I'm at. Maybe
no,
I'm,
worm scales.
just
Yeah.
that's my elo. But that is, and that's also a card that's going to be on the final boards of people. But that is why also I'm kind of like so surprised that the butcher is, and they're I think you put both in the same deck probably, right? And just like whichever one happens to work is the one that you go for that game. I don't know. But it seems like, yeah, I definitely see a lot more worm scale tinker, but I do like that as far as like the card acquisition of it with the change they made recently where you get the cards if you make the top three from your final opponent. That's definitely a huge comeuppance. I'm not sure that might have been around when you started, so you might not know before that happened. Yeah,
Yeah, I started fairly recently. So yeah, I've as long as I've been it
right.
may not have been in the game when I like actually was starting. I might just not
Yeah,
have known, but by the time that I was like starting to pay attention, it was the case. Um, Yeah, I think like you were saying though, that has its own limitations where it can kind of homogenize deck building in its own ways. But I think it's much healthier for people to not to feel like they actually get to do the things that they're losing to, and give them a shot themselves. I think that's a really good thing to have.
yeah.
And can I ask what your MMR is? And if you want me to cut it out, that's fine. Like I'm just curious so that like for context.
No, no, I was ready to volunteer it. Yeah. So I would say for context too, this season, now that there are going to be tournaments in Once Upon a Galaxy, and you can earn a second in or a third invite rather
Hmm.
for hitting 100 jewels. This might be the first season I've ever gotten to 100 jewels in a season. Um, but my asynchronous MMR is 3,461 currently.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah,
know where that puts me. I mean, it tells me I'm 323rd for the season for
cool.
legendary rank.
Yeah, I think I've definitely lost a little bit of perspective on like the game in some senses, I think, and I think it should be it's important to me that the like game is fun for everybody, like at whatever
Hmm.
stage. And I want to like get a sense of what that looks like in different contexts because I think I've been trying to like grind within top 10, trying to like see if I can chase one, although I don't think that's particularly likely. The top like three players, probably top five players, and then I've just like snuck in to like 5 and 4 recently a few times, are very, very good. And um anyway, but it definitely like does isolate your viewpoint. And yeah, I don't want to be like too out of touch, I guess. Um,
So I've never gone in any games that I've ever played, I don't think, really, except for like one, I'll say. I've never gone for top of the legend leaderboard, whatever that might be in the game. Um, sometimes I'll make a goal for myself, top 500, top 100 or whatever, depending on the size of the game. But there's only one game ever that I've had like the very top slot. And I think for the most part, like I really like now that we are getting tournaments and they're going to be asynchronous tournaments. So it might not be like the best judge, but tournaments are also sort of an equalizer where I don't have to spend however many hours playing the game in order to be competitive at the top level and can just, a show match sort of thing, I think is a lot more my speed. And a tournament that is like minimal investment to be able to show off your skill while not being like how much more, I guess, not to say that the top players are solely an amount of effort or grind that you'll put into it, but that's definitely one of the factors that goes into like
it is
getting
a
on the top of the
contributing
leaderboard.
factor.
Yeah, yeah. So that's never been something that I've wanted to get into because there's so many great games and I'm like, okay, I want to play some other games too, you
Well, and
know?
one thing that you were telling me about before the call was that like, or we were chatting about before like recording, was that you recently like won a Marvel Snap tournament, right? Like, and I think or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I've probably won, I don't know, we'll say 10 Marvel Snap tournaments.
Hmm.
And I've placed very well at some very large tournaments in gamings, but I have never been. I think that the highest I've gone on the Marvel Snap leaderboard is probably like the top 300, but right now I'm probably not even top 1000.
Yeah, I think my point with that is that like I kind of agree that like ranking is not a like inherent measurement of your skill. I think that there are many very, very excellent players who are ranked quite, low relative to things. I will say that I think that the top ranked players are truly incredible at the game.
Oh,
Um,
I'm
you
sure. Yeah, yeah.
getting once you get to like a high ranking, getting a low placement, especially because often you'll be um, other people in your lobby will be significantly lower MMR than you, it it tanks your rating. So you can't
Mhm.
you can't just maintain like a reasonable um, level of play and expect to like eventually reach like the
Yeah.
top levels because it will balance itself out.
And
Um,
I definitely don't mean to diminish the achievements of the
oh
top
yeah, I
players
don't
too.
think you were.
Part of the like grind, so to speak, too, is just like the putting in that much time to understand the game that well
Hmm.
too. And in this game also, and Marvel Snap is going to be the grind to level up your collection to where it needs to be, so that way you can compete at the top levels. So those are also factors for sure.
Yeah, I think everything that you were saying was completely like, in line with that. I think that that's a easy like misconception to make is that the top players
Mhm.
are just like playing the game for 10 hours a day. And I
Mhm.
think that whether or not that's true, um, there's I do think like I can speak from experience that they're very good. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
And part of with like being curious about the rank and the rating and stuff is sort of it's intriguing to me, and there's a little bit of like wanting to check that out too, to be like, if there is a different game that can be played inside of Once Upon a Galaxy that is, the top 20 or whatever, that you're seeing the top 20 players in your lobby every game, and just how that would color the experience of how the game feels to play. I think that would be a cool thing to check out. I have fun with the game at my level too, but I'm sure that that's also a fun, engaging experience.
Yeah, it's Magic, I think, is like a game that a lot of Galaxy players will have a little bit of a background in, and I think that's a game that like has managed that balance really successfully.
Mhm.
Like obviously not every like scene is exactly as fun or whatever, but that there's so many like different ways that people can play and care about winning, but have like a really different experience with. Um, and yeah, hopefully, I think it's good if this game can maintain that like different people have a different perception of the game that is enjoyable and accurate for their experiences. Um, but yeah, like have you had any particularly like sweet games where you discovered anything like new that where there was like
Hmm.
a cool moment for you?
Well, so you just brought up like thinking about different end games, and you also earlier you brought up like what have you been playing? One thing that I do wish that the game had was more ability to, and this is coming like directly from Marvel Snap, but like share your deck lists and maybe have like, I don't know if they'd ever have like multiple deck slots for a given captain, but things that allowed you to like, oh, somebody's like, oh, try out this thing on this captain, and you could just like share it and try it out, plug it in real quick. um that that would like lend to more experiences. I wind up like not even really changing my deck lists that often on most of the captains, just because like I get, you get one new card for a captain. I don't want to like go in there and remember which card I got the last time I played it, if it was a relevant card, and I'm not just like browsing through the captain collection and changing up the deck lists in between the games. I change the deck list on the captain select screen, and that's it.
Hmm.
Um, but uh, is that was just something that I had thought of based off the last thing you said. But what was the last question that you said there too?
Oh, I don't remember, and what you said was
Okay.
interesting. So let's continue down that line of thought. Because
Sure, sure.
I completely like my first instinct, if I'd heard that, I think a couple months ago even, might have been to think like to worry that that's just going to make everyone play the same thing. But
Mm,
like I actually don't think that that's true because I found that like when I'm building and playing, I definitely I recognize that like, oh, I've had this card really shine in the past, so I want to try and make it
hmm.
work in this, and then maybe I find that it doesn't, and then I take it out. And sometimes I'll try something new out, and then I'll kind of repeat that pattern and start jamming it in every deck, whether or not it makes like the most sense. And it will eventually teach me like what's good and what's not. But it leaves me with these massive blind spots for things. So I was playing like
You know
a
what I need? I need a like little flag, or a red circle that shows me that I have new cards on the captain. Maybe this will get super annoying, to be honest, but like when I'm going to play the captain, that's like, oh, you have three new cards on this captain since the last time you played it. Do you want to take a look at the deck before you hop into this game? Because then I might, but otherwise I don't tend to.
yeah. Um, Yeah, I think that could work for sure, but I think the other thing about it is that like even sometimes I will full ass know that I have like a card on a captain, but I just doesn't I just will scroll past it without thinking, right? And then
Yeah. Oh, totally.
sometimes
Yeah.
like seeing it pop up in somebody else's deck list, or more often what will happen is like, well, I guess no. So I'm making like 3 points. Let me make one at a time. So sometimes I will like play against somebody and I see them play a character that I don't have like that I've never really like given much thought to, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's like doing amazing, but I'm like, okay, well, whatever. That was just a fluke. They had whatever set up for it.
Right.
But if you see it
And
over
that's
and over doing that, then that's like
I
a
was gonna
different
say
thing.
that could be an ELO thing too. Like if you see a good player that you recognize playing a unique card, then you might also be a little bit more likely to take it in. But if if I see just you just see a card once, you might be willing to think, oh, that's just a fluke. Like that's just a random card that somebody happens to have, rather than like a choice that they deliberately made above other options, you know?
hmm And so I think that like sharing information and opinions and seeing other people's deck lists actually for me, like I think leads to me trying like doing a lot of things that I wouldn't have done otherwise, rather than kind of making me do the same thing over and over.
I think it
Um,
would homogenize things a little bit though if it was too easy, but it's also not like it's I don't know, because I think that at some level it would make people just copy the decks and not really think about it. But also at a lot of levels it wouldn't, just because like there's you need to have a certain level to your collection to be able to afford to do that in the first place. If you
mhm,
don't have the cards, then you can't just suddenly start playing the cards, right?
for sure. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's cool. Yeah, I'm very much thinking of this like deck list. I've like so I like with Tajima. Have you had much experience? I know you mentioned that like you play Candy
Oh,
quite often.
Tajima. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I've played a few games with it. It's an interesting captain. I don't really have too many thoughts about it. Uh, I didn't. It felt like it felt like it was mixed. I mean, it's both candy and animals, but it felt like it was a little conflicted, I guess. There's some overlap, like the three chef Katirs, though.
hmm
Um, and that was I think that is like an interesting example of a card that is not something that I'm typically looking to play, but was impressive to me in the Tajima list.
I found that that's a card that again, like I had scrolled past many, many times in
Yeah.
deck
Yeah.
building, and then the first time that I tried putting it in was like I was trying this like double dealer candy deck. Um, and it says recruit, it says candy, so I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And I
Oh,
was
sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
floored by
that's
like
pretty good.
how massive the impact was. Like a lot of the candy things are deceptive because when you're looking at them in
Right.
the deck list, you're like, okay, plus one, and like you don't actually get a sense of in
Mhm.
game that like this is like plus 16 to your squad off of like one purchase, and then you can silver it for like that for free later. Like it does
Yeah.
some wild things. But
And did they buff 3 Chef Katirs, recently, or, like, has it always just been good and you didn't know it because you weren't playing Tajima?
I think it's good in like a lot of other circumstances actually. It's just extra good and but I don't know if they have, but even if they have, I think Mysterio is a card that a lot of players that have been realizing has like a lot of
Mm,
potential. Um, and that's a card that I
that's
was
another card that is in 0 starter decks,
yes.
Mysterio.
Um, but yeah, like I think before the Mysterio, they slightly buffed Mysterio to change the buff that it gives to the transformed characters from +1/+1 to +5/+5. And I'd started to play
Mm,
it like before then and was like, I think this thing might actually be pretty good. And like that number is not what makes it like suddenly like shifted the equation. It's like where
right.
it fits in with the tempo of the game. Like, are you playing a strategy where you're often going to be in a situation where you have a lot of bronzes and you've managed to like keep up, but the lines that you're going for don't really have a meaningful path forward. Um, anyway, those situations haven't changed, but I think that that buff did make people like look at it again. And I think sometimes balance changes can work that way in a really fun way. Rudolph is similar where like
Yeah.
they gave him like a line of text that actually matters a lot for Mira. They made it so that Rudolph buffs your spells. but in general, it doesn't matter. But I think it made people give it another look, and that was
Mm.
another card that I
Yeah,
think
on Mira, yeah,
always
that's kind of cracked, huh?
it does do something particularly unique on Mira, but I think it's
Yeah.
playable in other circumstances as well, as long
Yeah,
as you
I've seen a
truly
lot of
care.
examples of that in games where they buff something and then people start playing it and then they bring it back to where it was before and people keep playing it because now they understand that it's good. And I'm curious, like I brought up the like did Chef Katir's get buffed just because I yeah, same thing, like never really considered that card until I started playing it on Tajima and then yeah, now I think it's a legitimate card that I could see putting in other decks.
Yeah, it really
I
overperforms.
think Double Dealer is a great idea.
Yeah, I haven't I've started playing a lot more Candy like very recently. I was kind of off it for a while. Um, so I'm not sure. Like I don't feel super confident talking about it. But I think it's quite good. Um, what are there cards that like are pet cards for you that you like particularly like find yourself
Hmm.
putting on your board maybe more than you see other people do. I think that especially set cards or like shared pool cards, there are some that like I definitely slam a lot more, and I know that other players kind of have their own inclinations as well. Where um, short up, I think is the one who loves a iron cast. A
Mm.
disproportionate amount of my boards will have a Boon Willow on them.
Oh, I love Ironcast because I'm never not picking Trash Panda. Um, so that's going to be on a disproportionate amount of my boards just from that. I'm trying to think of what would be a card that I have ideas for like some captains
Sure, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that other people aren't playing, but I'm not sure what cards are even like underplayed necessarily. But and you'll have to tell me if these captains are underplayed or appropriately played or what have you. But I've always liked Zheng Yisao,
Oh,
the
cool.
pirate captain. I've always been a fan of that one. Um,
I definitely not a common sight. Although every
yeah,
once in a
I
while
think
I'll
that
see someone like running Zing and like I'm kind of impressed sometimes, and I think that's definitely one where I'm like, if you understand the play patterns, it's going to look very different than if you're like, oh God, I guess I'll give it a try, and you just kind of like maybe play. You just don't know what actually works. You don't understand the conditions that make it succeed.
right.
S- So you,
And
yeah.
I don't know if I don't think Ogre Magi is like an underrated card necessarily because I have to imagine that people do know that that card's a lot of fun and good. But I might like it even more than that. So that could definitely be another card, and that's a Zen card as well.
I haven't seen an Ogre Magi in months, so yeah, I
Okay,
think I
yeah.
think if you like Ogre Magi, I think that's a perfect candidate for a card that like I would
Yeah,
say
we'll
is
go Ogre
underrated.
Magi then.
Cool,
Ogre
cool.
Magi specifically in Zeng even too.
So
Um,
what do you like about it? What makes you happy about putting an Ogre Magi on your board and then like seeing it do its thing?
um, I think that so one of the cool things about Zeng, I feel, is you're going to be able to you can count on the idea of being able to find Ogre Magi and basically build your whole game plan to set up for the second you find Ogre Magi, it's already really good. Like just pump up your first slot as much as you can with the parrot and maybe like an innkeeper, though that's also an epic card. Maybe you have like the Jelly Roger, like you're ready to go. You play all of these pirates that yeah, are like pumping up, like getting the scene ready for Ogre Magi. But then when you're getting those bonus shops of pirates, they're also giving you additional chances to find it.
I think that's a perfect example of like the way in which familiarity can change your understanding of a thing because like I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, 14 whatever attack it has, I think it's like around 14.
Hmm.
Like how is this
No,
ever
12.
hunting on turn
Hmm.
7? Because I'm not considering like the groundwork that you can organically lay in a way that builds like is cohesive with your like earlier game plan that then sets this up. I think like I talk about Serena a lot, but um, Serena's a captain that I think like there are many lines that are unconventional, but work at every stage of the game and set you up for things that like can
Mm.
really go off later. But if you just like look at the thing later and you're like, well, a 2x double double that makes the slot a 20/20, that's not doing anything, you know? Like um
Hmm.
it's about like the entire arc of your run and not just this one card. Um, I love stuff like that. I think it's so cool. Yeah, that's yeah, perfect example.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's probably my best example for that. But I don't know. I can run through. I only have like maybe 10 platinum captains, and I know like one of them is probably everybody has it platinum, including people that like just downloaded the game yesterday. I assume already have Trash Panda platinum and have all the cards on it because it's just awesome. But I'm curious, yeah, like
I
between
definitely
my
think that's one
other
of those things where like sometimes like when like a person loves a thing, they assume it's easy to assume that everyone else like knows it too, like how fun this is, and I'm always like,
yeah, no,
that's definitely not always the case. Yeah,
that's me just showing how much I love Trash Panda.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I think that so I just made a video and I made a thread on Discord in like the deck list section because I didn't see a deck list for Lady of the Lake. And she's like a relatively new captain. She came out with Candylar. I guess she's not new for you. She's been
Yeah, as
out
far as I
since.
know, she's been there forever, and she
Yep,
feels like
yep.
she
She's
could
one
have
of
been
the
there
original
forever.
captains for sure. Yeah, but she is a captain that I always enjoy playing, and um, yeah, I think she's a lot of fun. I think that I don't know. I assume that other people like playing her too, but it's tough for me to know exactly.
That is a again a perfect example because I cannot stand playing Lady of the Lake. I
Mm,
am a pretty um, tempo-oriented player, I would say. I think I've gotten a lot more breadth in the past like month or so, but like I used to play that captain, and what would happen is that like my fifth treasure sometimes wouldn't happen until like turn 13, like,
mm,
and then I'd be like, what am I doing here? Like, because I would just like try and play to like keep pace with the other with the
yeah,
board, and sometimes I don't know, like I don't think that would happen these days, like it would happen significantly earlier, but still, like, I don't feel very comfortable making like greedy lines and then hoping that like something will pay
right.
off randomly later. I kind of want to know, like, have a better sense of like, okay, like if I do this, I should expect this next fight to look like this. And um, yeah, so
So
I don't, yeah, I don't feel comfortable at all with that captain. I would never click her in the tournament just because like I think that not because I think she's bad, but because like I know that I am very likely to end up in a sixth place with that, much more likely than if I picked like Arthur or CEO, where like I can just play the game.
So this is something that I thought about bringing up earlier on in the episode because I think it is actually really informative of the type of player that I am. But one of my accolades as a gamer is that I was the highest win rate percentage player in Storybook Brawl 99. Is that something that you've heard of, or does that mean anything to you?
Storybook Brawl 99. I played a fair bit of Storybook Brawl, but I
Yes.
don't that's not ringing any bells.
So occasionally, Storybook Brawl would have events, and they were like 3 hour windows where I think that's how they did it, where
Oh, this is vaguely familiar now.
there
Yeah.
there were 100 player lobbies or 99 player lobbies. I forget which one it was, but you would be playing up against I think 99 other players in your lobby.
That's so cool.
And it was, yeah, it was definitely like a cool, unique thing. And I think that if we had a Once Upon a Galaxy 99, that is also where I would really be able to shine, because I am always going for the plays that are going to do some crazy over the top shenanigans with all the secret rares, and I try to see like how often I can get the Exodia comp in the game, which there's a few Exodia comps, and you might just, the basic one is just you have everything, right? Like that's so much more possible in this game. In Storybook Brawl you could only ever have 3 treasures, so you had to like pick and choose. But in this game, like the Exodia comp is pretty straightforward. It's just a comp where you have every single treasure, right?
I do think that there's a
Um,
little bit of a inverse to that though, in that like in this game it's a lot harder to feel like, oh, okay, I've hit Exodia, I've won, because like
sure.
there's there's always a bigger fish in this game because there isn't that cap. So
Yes.
I think sometimes you can get into a position where you're like, oh, I've won, I'm so strong, and then somebody else
Right.
comes up and they're like just even bigger, and that's cool. I
the
like that about
the
the game.
true Exodia in this game is going to be a doppelganger in front of a chip on the ship when you have a world shrub and a poison apple, and all of your cards destroy all of your opponent's cards and summon back 10 more times. That's like the craziest that you could take it.
Okay, I suppose,
But
yeah. um,
and I'm sure that there's other things that are like comparable in that too. Like there would be meta games within that, but that's where, like, that is what I would find really fun if we were able to do. Like then I'm forgetting the name of the epic. It's a Hydra, I believe, that
Snapping Hydra,
um
yeah.
yeah, Snapping Hydra. There we go. So like that would be really good in that meta game as well. And so, yeah, there was Storybook Brawl 99 events, and I was, for the limited times that those were available, had like the most first place finishes in those events. Um, and I think that that's like partially just because of what I tend to go for strategically in these types of games, and a little bit just in terms of, because I forget exactly what sparked my mind. It might have been
We were
some
kind of
type
just
of like
talking
playing
about
for
like the
tempo.
difference between like first or sixth mentality, which I think is like Lady of the Lake is very much a first or sixth
Oh yeah, with Lady of
captain,
the Lake. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I just shy away from. Don't like it. Jay Sparrow is similar. I think like I just hate getting
Yeah,
sixth on
he's
that
a
captain, and I
little.
don't like getting first enough on that captain to make up for that. So I will undervalue Jay, even though that's a perfectly strong captain where your average
I
placement will be
think
quite
Jay
high.
is much more feast or famine than Lady of the Lake, though. I think Lady of the Lake is. Um, I'd argue there's games where Lady of the Lake is like a tempo captain even,
It can be,
because
yeah.
you so, excuse me, why I brought up the Storybook Brawl 99 as well with that is I think that a lot of the interesting tension in the auto battler genre is figuring out when to take risks to set yourself up well 2 turns from now, 3 turns from now, 10 turns from now, and using your health as a resource in that way to find other times to set yourself up well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's been a very recurring trend when I've talked to players of like all levels of like experience and competitiveness, is that like that's the exciting thing about the game, is trying to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And where different players align, both between preference and experience, is like gonna change, but that's kind of the underlying, yeah, that's the underlying tension that makes it
Mm-hmm.
interesting and exciting. It's cool.
Because like Lady of the Lake, you really want to complete her treasure, you just grab a Miseria, right? And for the most part, that's basically going to complete her captain power just like by itself, all the constellation prizes.
Yeah, Missouri's a character that like I just go up and down on so much depending on like and sometimes it's a little bit unfair because it'll be like, oh, I've had like 3 games in a row where I just got full-hearted twice and then I got 2 treasures and I set myself up to get full-hearted and I'm like kicking myself for
Hmm.
that. So, yeah, but like those games don't necessarily like reflect the average experience. I'm just like sick of it. But then sometimes it's just like I just played a Nathaniel Drake. I always call him Natty
Mm.
D in my head, which I realize like other people are not going to know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Anyway, where like I put in my little spreadsheet where I take my notes, like being like, let's be honest, Miseria 100% won you this game. Like I was dead,
Oh
dead,
yeah,
dead
yeah. It's
otherwise, and
real
it
good in
was it's kept me
Nathaniel
so stable
and
and was the
Natty.
reason why I won later. Just got to give it the respect that it's due. Like when it
Hmm.
but
Yeah, I think there's a few captains where Missouri or yeah, what do you call it? I
I
call it
call it
Miseria.
Miseria.
Oh, okay,
But
I
I
just
think
say
it's the sort of thing
misery.
where it does sound like more like misery, but it also sounds like
Yeah,
more like
yeah.
diarrhea that way. So that's why like
Okay, okay.
I'm avoiding it,
Um,
but it's whatever. I do think, yeah, anyway.
they're all made up. I never take it too seriously when people correct my pronunciation of anything. If you want to call Old MacDonald, if you want to, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
pronounce that
I
however you
do
want.
think I should probably figure out how to pronounce the pirate like captain. I think it's Jung Yisa. And I speak
Uh,
Mandarin, but I don't know how to
oh,
like
okay.
I don't know how to uh translate it from like the pinging version of it. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know the like history. I could this would be so easy. I'll just look this up later to like look up the story that it's clearly being drawn from. Um,
Hmm.
but that's the only one where I feel like a little bit bad about it because I think that one is like tethered to a culture. The rest of it, who cares? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Right. Yeah, like where do you put your emphasis on Gokatu? Is it Gokatu or is it Gokatu? No,
yeah, that
nobody
one
would say
is
it like
yeah.
that, right?
I'm not too bummed about. Yeah. Um, okay, so I could we take maybe like a 5 minute break? Just I'm
Sure,
gonna
sure.
get some water. My throat's getting a little bit dry, and
Yeah,
then
sounds good. I'll go
maybe
grab
we
some
can
as
chat for
well.
like another half hour, and then I've gotta pack up and get ready to go.
Cool.
All right,
Sounds
cool.
good.
I'll be back in a few minutes.
Cool.
Yeah, so we just took a little break. And one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit was when you mentioned the tournament system that's coming up. Um, One thing that I've been finding, just knowing that the tournaments are coming, is that I've been playing a lot more captains that I am not that comfortable with because of that. And I think part of this is also that I've been playing in more live lobbies, and in live lobbies you
Mhm.
also don't get a reroll on your third captain. It's just you see
Oh, I
three
didn't know that.
captains. Um, and sometimes I was like a little, like I think a little bit of an ego thing, right? You wanna show off a little bit when you're playing live, but there's a little moment of panic where you're like, oh my God, like I don't know what to click here. I don't want to make a fool of myself. And
Mm, mm.
um,
I thought you were going the other way. I thought you were saying like you want to pick a silly captain to show that you can win with a bad captain. I
Oh,
thought that's where you were going
I
to take
think
it.
if I see Witches 3 like or Serena, I'm in a live lobby, I'm taking it because I think those are like signature captains for me and I'm going to like want to show off
Yeah.
why I think that because they're often I think bundled up together with all of the other kind of like okay captains and I think they're not like
Mhm.
they're far from the best captains, but I think they are a significant step above from some of the others that are they're
Oh yeah, no,
bundled up
I
with.
totally agree on on both of
Um
those. I think
Anyway,
yeah,
so if I
top
see
two.
those, I'll definitely do it. But I think another with the tournament, I think it's a cool thing about it that like it is actually diversifying my captain selection because I want to be ready for what happens
I
when I see a
agree. And
captain
I'm
select.
thinking on every captain select right now. I'm like, okay, which captain am I taking here? And I'm also thinking, so I don't know if this is something that you're considering too, but you brought up Jay Sparrow and Lady of the Lake. Are you ever taking them for the final game of the day? And are you changing which captain you want to pick based off the requirement for the lobby if you need to get fifth place in that lobby, as opposed to you need to get first place in that lobby? Does
Yeah,
that influence your decision?
I talked to GD a little bit about this, Good Digestion a little bit about a similar thing where, yeah, it certainly would change my decision. I personally am still not taking Jay Sparrow just because I think I'm very inexperienced. I don't understand the setup lines right. Like I may not be taking
Sure.
the supports that I need to be taking so that in the future, like let's say like I miss, I just don't see my hunts and stuff like that. I'm then not in a position to capitalize on them when I finally do
Right.
see something that's like useful. Um, but I think in theory, I'm much, 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 like if I was more comfortable with it, I would be much more likely to take it much later in the tournament than I would be earlier. And I think that's, yeah, I don't think that the tournament system is like a particularly like perfect indicator of player skill, but I think it's a fun, cool way to, like play the game and to do something different and competitive. I like it. How do you
One
feel
thing
about
that
it?
one thing that I'm really curious about for you specifically and your ilk is what will the matchmaking be like? Will your rating have any indication on the level of the lobbies that you'll see as opposed to the ones that I'll see? Otherwise, it's going to be much easier for me to win a tournament than you,
So
which
MMR does not affect your lobby building in the tournament, which I think is going to
okay.
make day one's a little bit weird for a lot of players who are suddenly playing against uh, players of wildly different skill levels, and I think it'll
Right,
balance out
right.
really quickly after that. I think day two is going to be in like a pretty massive swing as far as like
So day 2 will use it. This is not something maybe I gotta read up a little bit before I can have this conversation, but
oh sorry. So what I mean by that is that the day two players are the ones who survived, who have made it through day one, and I think in
yeah, but
general,
aren't they also just, like, using randomly generated asynchronous boards, or are they getting some type of feed that only has tournament data going into it?
hey, No Luck's power goes out while we're speculating about where the tournament boards come from. I asked on Discord and I got conflicting answers, so I'm just going to say that we don't know yet. I'm skipping ahead a bit in the recording until after his power comes back and we're no longer just guessing facts and we're kind of discussing concepts again. All right, back to the show.
Uh, if everybody gets thrown into the same thing, then the first day of the tournament at the very least becomes a lot easier for some people and a lot harder for some other people.
I think it might be a little bit of a bloodbath. We'll have to see how like the
Yeah,
community like responds to that. Um,
that is a fairly like typical experience though. I will say in Marvel Snap there is a sort of like in-game tournament format and it's called the conquest format and you if you're familiar with normal Marvel Snap, normally you just play
I'm
like
not. I've
one
never played
game.
a game.
Okay. So it's in this conquest format, you play like to 10, both players have like 10 life points or whatever, if you want to view it like that. And there's different queues for it. You could just call them bronze, silver, gold, and then infinity is the final one. And the bronze, silver, and gold queues all have some amount of like matchmaking. But in order to get to the silver, you have to win a bronze. In order to get to the bronze, in order to get to the gold, you have to win a silver. In order to get to the infinity, you have to win a gold. So the infinity queue, there's not that many people that can play it because you have to have won
Hmm.
all through there. And because of that, in the Infinity Queue, and also I think it does a better job of like making it feel more like an elite thing, but there's no matchmaking within that. It's you're gonna play people from any possible skill level that are in the Infinity Queue. And because of that, for some players, it is the absolute hardest challenge in the game. And for other players, it is the easiest. It's not even calling it a challenge, would not even be correct because it's the easiest possible queue in the game. And it's yeah, kind of curious when you meld in all of those things. I think that some people are potentially going to be if it's fully open, then potentially some people would be disappointed by the day one tournament experience on both sides. The really enfranchised players are going to feel disappointed because it just feels so easy. And the other players are going to be disappointed because it feels too hard.
Yeah, I think for the players that are winning day one, regardless of where they're from, it's not going to feel too bad because then they get, you get to day two. But I think
Yeah,
there's a pretty big, like we'll have to see how it feels for, um, yeah, the other situation. And I think that this game has an element of that in Legendary as well, where I think the first couple, like I don't know, like several hundred like MMR points of Legendary are probably like a there are a lot more players in that group, right? Because like you can't go down from there. And the
sure,
but
sure. Yeah,
it's
there's like
often a
a
little bit of a
floor.
rude awakening, I think, for people um, at that like moment because they've been playing a lot of games where it's all been felt like, they've been steadily improving and so have their opponents, and then suddenly you're in this situation where like all bets are off, and I found that like personally to be like really exciting and cool, and I was like being like, whoa, okay, hold on, why am I losing all the time? I'm not supposed to be losing, and then
Yeah,
I got to learn. But then in standard games, you have a lot of time, you can try things out. In the tournament, like, there are stakes, and you don't have that many shots at it. So to have that experience right away, in that situation might be like something that's uncomfortable. Um, I definitely think that this is something that they will develop. I'm so glad that they're doing something and not waiting for it to be perfect.
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, just don't. Yeah, just let's try something and see what happens. I personally think that one of the most exciting things that you can do in a game is lose. I think that that is much more fun to me than when I win a game. As much as we want to win the games and do something that feels satisfying, it's more satisfying if it actually takes something to get you there. And if I because I play a variety of different games, and when I try a game out for the first time and I win it, I'm like, "Oh, so this just, like, is not that hard of a game. It's not something that's really going to challenge me or potentially not worth pursuing that much."
Mhm.
And if I can lose the first time I'm playing a game, then I'm like, "Okay, I gotta figure something out here. I gotta figure out this puzzle."
Yeah, I completely agree. It's something that like, you know, I'll go back to single player roguelikes again. That's a big make or
Yeah,
break for me is like it can be whether or not it feels interesting and fun is not completely tied to that, but like the
yeah.
challenge is so crucial. It's that feeling that you've like accomplished something when you win, that you need the risk of like you need a real risk of losing in order for that to feel meaningful.
And
Um,
there's a balance too. If you just get totally blown out, then it's like, okay. And the big thing, like with a single player roguelike, there is Slay the Spire, which has a like I'm willing to invest some time into Slay the Spire because it has a track record. And I understand that there's thousands of people that have played it before me and recognize that it's balanced well and it's been tested. But if you just download an indie roguelike game where you don't know how much effort has been put into balancing it, either if it's too easy or too hard on the first run, sometimes I'll feel like, okay, well, this isn't my job to, provide feedback to balance this game. I
mhm.
could maybe try it again in a few years or something, but it's not my responsibility right now.
Yeah. Oh, and first like sensations and like that vibe that you get from a game matters so much. And I think
Hmm.
trying to I'm not certainly not trying to like give the developers advice or like whatever, but I think it's just so crucial for a game's success. Especially, I think it matters so much more for a multiplayer game because the game is going even beyond whether or not it can like survive with a player base. A really flourishing player base is going to make the game look very different than a
Hmm.
kind of like small stagnant one. Um, so yeah, I hope that they continue to you know uh, allow it to grow. It's been really cool seeing it grow. I know I'm pretty new to it, but I think hopefully I'm entrenching myself a little bit, and I would like it
Hmm.
to I would love it if I didn't just like put all this time into a thing that is gonna evaporate.
Yeah,
It can
yeah.
happen.
Well, as
Certainly
as
can.
a former Storybook Brawl
Yep,
player, yeah, just enjoy what you got while you got it, I'll
it's true.
say. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of a thing with all of these live service games, and this feels sort of like a live service game, but because the main way that you interact with it is through these asynchronous lobbies, it doesn't necessarily feel like that, though of course like if the servers for the game went down, then there wouldn't be a game still. But it does feel a little bit different. It feels like, I don't know, I think it would probably still, there'd be nothing that could happen because it is a multiplayer game.
Yeah, I mean, you still fundamentally like even with async, it is a multiplayer game.
Hmm.
Habits change, people start to learn, um, both at like specific levels, but also I think the community does kind of learn through like osmosis. Things
Hmm.
spread, but it's
And
yeah.
it does feel like it needs to evolve or offer new content over time to keep it a little bit fresh as well, both because it's asynchronous and because part of the, I'll say, like, gameplay loop does involve the unlocking of new content with
Mhm.
new captains and new cards for those captains.
Yeah, that's true, and it's something that, people talk about and is going to be it it's hard to know exactly where to draw the balance because, sometimes it's too much new stuff and then sometimes it's too little new stuff and
Mhm.
um both of these things are not ideal. And of course it's subjective too within that, right? So it's very difficult to um thread that line, but it's yeah, I don't envy them having to figure it out.
Mhm.
But I hope that they do a good job of it. And it's one thing that
Yeah,
like is cool to hear from more experienced players again is that like how the game has changed over time.
right. Because
Because
you don't when, like, yeah, you don't know before a time where there was 4 new captains every month, and before each captain came with its own starter deck too. Um,
yeah, there's a lot I take for granted.
yeah, yeah, and both of those things do a lot to just add a whole bunch of new content. And yeah, before sets, even you don't know time before sets. So which, well, right now there's only Candylar, I suppose, but
That's going to be a really like I mean that'll be a huge change for the game, and I think it'll kind of show us as players a sense of what their vision is, I guess, for it, right? Because it's
mhm.
um, to what extent it's more of the same and to what extent it's something that's totally new, is
One
going to
thing
be
that
cool.
always is, so I try not to get too into games where you have a collection because, like I said, my favorite genre of games is auto battlers, for the idea that all players can go in on the same page. And that is much more battlegrounds and team fight tactics than it is Once Upon a Galaxy. And it was Storybook Brawl much more than it is Once Upon a Galaxy. So I will
Mhm.
say that from that perspective, I enjoy those games a lot more. But one thing that I am very cautious on when I see it is the frequency at which content is released for a game,
Mhm.
because I don't like a lot of content. And it's weird to say as a content creator, it's cool to have new things and be able to make videos about new stuff. So I want it from that angle, but I I think like Pokemon Pocket TCG, if you downloaded that or tried it out for a second, it was, I don't know, it felt like the game was like out for a month and then they're like, okay, now here's set 2. And if you'd played every day and done every single daily login and whatever, then you'd probably keep up. But if you weren't, then you just have like no shot with that type of release schedule for it.
Yeah, it's something that I think is really difficult. Like there's multiple incentives to continue to like pump out stuff. Like there's financial incentives, but there's also social
Right.
and creative incentives where you want to do it, and you don't. It doesn't feel good as someone who is also, like making things to like have a long time when you feel like you haven't put anything out there. You want to share what you're working on. Um, but I, I am in the same camp of I don't need all this new stuff. I think that I'm not
Mhm.
bored of the game, and I would rather I care more about the longevity of the game than about like making sure that I'm like keeping my like IV drip of exciting new stuff going. That's my perspective at least on it. All right, so I think
So
I've
I
got
was gonna check just real quick. I loaded up Pokemon Pocket TCG. I think it's been out for a year at this point. It looks like it came out in October of 2024,
okay.
and there have been 13
Oh
sets
my
by
God.
what I'm reading here, um, each with uh, between probably 100 and 300 cards.
Okay,
That
that
might
does make
not
four
be,
captains a month seem a little bit less like this is too much new stuff. I still think it's too
yeah,
much new stuff, but
yeah.
like it puts it into perspective a little bit.
Yeah, some games just really, really, and I don't even I think it's generous to call Pokemon Pocket TCG a game. Sorry if if that is gonna, offend anybody or whatever, but it's mostly just a app for microtransactions and gambling and dopamine and stuff. To the
Yeah, I
point
don't.
where like if you watch any like if you get served any ads for Pokemon Pocket TCG, there is never gameplay in the advertisements. It is always pack opening videos.
Mhm.
And I think that that is indicative of it, but it's a different audience for sure. But I think that yeah, that can definitely be something to be wary of. But I don't know, it feels all right to me right now for Once Upon a Galaxy, but I imagine for people that want to take breaks or not be as invested, it could certainly feel like it's just like an insurmountable amount of content.
Uh, yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think in general the pricing, well, they have to make money somehow. And I don't feel that the ways that they've chosen to do it feel predatory, or like, weird. It's just I don't think that they're perfect either. So uh,
Yeah.
it makes a big difference that I don't feel like I'm being strong. I don't know. I don't know the right word that I'm looking for, but I think we both know what I'm trying to say. Um,
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got to wrap up my call and get going, but yeah, is there anything
Great.
that you'd like to add or plug before we hang up?
No, yeah, you can watch regular Galaxy content. I probably upload between 1 and 2 Galaxy videos a week on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/no NoLucksGiven. And that's it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, NoLucksGiven, for coming on and chatting with me. Yeah, I had a nice time. I hope you did too. And
Awesome.
I'll see you around. Yeah, I'll check
Cool.
out more of your videos for sure too. It's always like nice, having a little bit of a a face to it, because otherwise there's only so much time you have, right? You watch the people that you know.
Hmm.
So I love being able to like get to know people a little bit better. All right,
For sure. Awesome. Great chatting with you.
bye. Two-Headed Wizard is hosted by me, Tom H. It is unaffiliated with Million Dreams. Our intro music is Through the Crystal by Jeremy Blake, and our outro music is King Porter Stomp by Joel Cummins. Our artwork is by me. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can search for Jampot in the Once Upon a Galaxy Discord and shoot me a DM. Thanks for listening.